In ASEA offers, what makes one stand out over another? How do you craft an offer that's competitive yet budget friendly? If you've ever been left wondering why your offer didn't make the cut or how to make yours irresistible, you're in the right place. We'll also reveal the biggest mistakes buyers make and how to avoid them, so you can walk away with the keys to your dream home. Stay tuned as we break it all down and equip you with the tools to write offers that don't just compete, they win. I'm here with Tiffany Score from Denovo Realty. Tiffany, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be here. Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm loving 2025 so far. So,
Good.
yeah, no complaints.
Good. Doing some traveling?
Yes. That's kind of my MO. It's kind of my, everyone has their thing, and travel is definitely my thing, whether it's just, I've got a house up in Minnesota, so I do a lot of back and forth from there when it's convenient. You can do that kind of on a whim, which is nice.
Right.
Travel is so easy these days, and try to take a couple, one or two bigger trips a year. But no big trips planned right now, but headed up to Minnesota this weekend actually just to do some ice fishing and
Cool.
Yeah, take advantage of some of those, those wintry activities. Check those boxes.
Yeah. Well, if I could put you on the spot, what's your favorite place to go if you had one
To visit?
to visit?
I have a favorite, and it's Marbella, Spain.
Oh.
I actually used to live there. So
Cool.
It's kind of like a third home to me, if you will. I lived there for a while. It's on the south of Spain on the Mediterranean. You can see, like on a clear day, you can see Gibraltar. You can see the coast of Africa.
Cool.
It's across the Strait of Gibraltar. It's beautiful. Everything. It has everything. It has like all the cultural elements. You can eat tapas for, a low budget. You can go to a nice restaurant. You can climb a mountain and be on the beach in the same day. And
Cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. So, and now it's like, I've been there so many times that it's just, I can do a quick trip out of it and go, and I know exactly what I want to do and come back. But Yeah, I love international travel too.
Well, Brevard's probably a second finisher, right?
Exactly. Very similar climate.
Very
similar, line of longitude.
Is it 47 degrees there this morning?
I don't know. I didn't check the weather, but I know it does get a little chilly in the winter.
Yeah. Well, cool. We're here talking about crafting offers. And, it's obviously an offer's the point that gets people under contract,
Yep.
and gets them one step closer to the closing table. How important is a well-crafted offer in any market, whether it's a good or bad market?
Well, I mean, it's the most important part, I think, element of a transaction, obviously, is having a good offer. And it does depend a little bit on what type of a market you're sitting in. If it's, a competitive market where you're going up against other offers. Also, the buyer situation, is it a cash transaction? Is it lending? Is it, what's the time frame? Those types of things. So, if it's a tight market, obviously, things like using, escalation clauses, things, anything to make your offer stand out. But showing you're committed, I think, having all of your ducks in a row, making sure that your buyer is pre-approved, just kind of knowing what's important, doing your due diligence ahead of time, doing your market analysis and your valuations, and being ready to go for your buyer, and communication with the sellers or with the listing agent. Again, that goes back to showing you're committed and serious about the offer. And I think there's a lot of value in that.
Good. Yeah. So, I mean, it's crazy, even in down markets, up markets, I mean, that offer, the four corners of the legal document is extraordinarily important.
Right.
And that's what makes or breaks your deal, right?
Yep.
So what makes a winning offer stand out in a competitive housing market? When I say that, even the last couple of years, people don't realize it was competitive to a degree, maybe not a ton of different, competing against it, but you're competing against a seller who has expectations.
Right. Oh, well, that's just it. And it is so much about the seller's needs too. So I think, finding out what's important to the seller, and if you are able to cater to that, if you are able to cater your offer to what's important to the seller, I think that really puts your offer at an advantage. Whether that's, terms, time frame, closing, time frame, flexibility, things like that. Obviously, a high offer price is good.
Right.
But sometimes that's not the most important thing to a seller. Sometimes, sometimes they have to sell their house, or they have to find their own house to move into. Of course, I have to sell our house. I have to find a house to buy. That's what I meant. But yeah, I mean, there's so many elements to an offer, and just finding out again what's important to the seller, I think, is a big important piece of it.
So you make a good point. It's like you can't really make it competitive unless you know what the seller wants.
Right.
And so how do you go about that? How does that work? Finding out what the seller wants.
Finding out?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think the communication piece. Talk to the listing agent. Find out ahead of time what's important, and you can. I've had buyers who want to reach out to send a letter or something. Send a love letter to the to the sellers, and just to kind of show that commonality and kind of make it a little bit more personal. And that's really important to a lot of sellers. They want to know that whoever's moving into their house is going to take really good care of it and carry on what they started. And, I actually am working with a seller right now, and, they're so sad to leave. They have to leave for work, for job relocation. And they just want to pick their house up and take it with them. So they're like they're really attached to their house.
To it, yeah.
And we've, kind of found out a little bit about the buyers right now who we have a pending transaction with, and they are very similar to the sellers. They are a young military family. They love the outdoors. They love gardening. They love their animals. And like that it just makes my sellers feel so much better about everything, and it makes them feel, I don't know, it's just how heartwarming for them, and they feel better leaving it in their hands than versus like someone that's not going to take care of it or someone they have no commonality with, But yeah,
that's good. They found the right buyers.
Yes. Although I will say I had one, and I've only had a handful of buyers do that where they, will reach out directly and, kind of give their background, give their story a little bit. I did have one instance where the seller did not like that.
Oh.
I would say 95% of the time it's well received, regardless of the outcome. But I did have a seller once that thought it was like an invasion of privacy or something, but she was kind of a disgruntled old woman. But anyway, it's just a little side story.
Yeah, she was probably going to be unhappy regardless. So.
Right, exactly. Maybe you just find out a little bit more about your seller before. Yeah, I guess sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So
do you think that we'll call it a love letter to the seller? Do you think that's something that is advised to do? Do you think is not a good idea, or where do you stand?
Again, it's just everything is so circumstantial. Everything is it kind of depends on what situation your sellers are in, because some sellers aren't attached to their house, or maybe they're selling an investment property or something like that, So it just depends on the situation, I think.
Okay. So what are the key elements of a well-crafted offer to a seller? I mean, you kind of said it's situational, but what are some of if you kind of break it out, what are some of the key elements in there?
I mean, I'm speaking to other professionals in the industry so some of this is probably pretty obvious, but, obviously having a short, the less contingencies, the better. So, having a short inspection period, having a, shorter loan approval and flexibility on closing date, again, catering kind of to the seller's needs on that. But, obviously high offer price, but buyers also look at things like, which lender are they using? What kind of financing are they using?
Right.
Is our house going to appraise where it needs to, in regards to the type of financing they're doing and those types of things. There's so much subjectivity in the offer, just depending on the situation.
Well, so from a selling perspective on your listings, how important is that financing piece on there?
Actually, I'm actually kind of in a situation right now. We actually we had 2 offers in hand, and we went with an offer that was slightly lower because of the terms, because of the financing terms, and we felt more comfortable with it. So it is important, especially, depending on how the home is priced and where it's sitting. Is it going to appraise? Do you feel comfortable that it's going to appraise, if they're not putting any money down, if they're putting, if they're paying cash, it's it's, depending on that and just the offer, the situation that we were in, one of the offers was they were going to come in over asking price and they wanted concessions back.
Oh, okay.
But we were, so at the bottom line, they were going to walk away with a little bit more, but we were really concerned about the appraisal piece on
Gotcha.
that. So.
Yeah, that could be an X factor in that type of situation. How important, now this might be a self-serving question, but how important is the lender in that transaction? If side by side, everything else being equal, an out-of-area lender versus a local lender, is that something that's considered?
Yes, that makes me think of another story, of course. Everything's relatable, right? It is important, and I can tell you, that's a question that we ask as agents, that's before you submit your offer, what lender is your buyer working with?
Right.
And if you have, good experiences with one lender versus another, it does make a difference. And you kind of, relay that information to your clients, and, you give them the information that you have, and like, this is the experience I've had working with this one versus this one. And maybe a year or so ago, I had some clients working with a lender that doesn't necessarily have the best reputation for meeting deadlines, just harder to communicate with, harder to work with. I won't name names, but it was not a local lender, local mortgage broker. And it did play a role in, they ended up not going. It was kind of they actually had multiple offers too, or they were expecting multiple offers, and they didn't take ours. And he essentially said it was because of the lender. Yeah. And they just didn't trust it, and they didn't like the terms. They didn't trust that they were going to be able to meet their deadlines. And so it definitely does make a difference. We get excited when we hear that our buyers are, working with Morgan Financial, or whoever offers on the house, their clients are working with Morgan Financial, because we know that you guys kick butt and your deadlines. The communication piece. My TC the other day, she actually said, just a couple days ago, she said, I absolutely love working with Mary and Jasmine.
Awesome.
She said, they're so good at communicating, and I just feel like nothing's getting overlooked, and that makes my job easier for sure.
Yeah. Well, our stance is, and this is how lenders should, I'm trying to be a bit generic here, but lenders should say, look, let us worry about the lending. That gives you more time to do all the other stuff.
Yes.
You got all the other stuff you got to do on the transaction. You got plenty to do. And it's nice when you can trust the lender to do their job and their part.
Yeah.
Well, cool. What are some common mistakes? People are fearful of that offer and making mistakes. What are some common mistakes that you see buyers made? You might have said, look, here's your options. Yeah. I don't suggest doing this, but what are some of the mistakes that they might make when putting an offer, and how can you ensure that they I don't know if you can ever make sure a buyer is going to do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
But how do you ensure that they do the right things in order to make a strong offer? So what are the mistakes, and how do you kind of navigate that with them?
I think so much of it comes back, at least for me. Like I'm very, I don't want to call myself a control freak, but I am a control freak. But I think a lot of that comes back to us as agents representing our buyers, and making sure that they're educated on everything they need to know when they are making an offer, and making sure that they're aware of the other things that come into play: closing costs, insurance costs, taxes, doing your due diligence for your clients, looking into, and if you're buying a condo or a townhome, looking into the HOA details, any big assessments coming up.
Right.
We're dealing with that a lot right now, I think just educating our clients is good. But as far as the buyers themselves, I'm not really sure. I guess I feel like that's kind of all I can think of as a mistake that I would make in translating that offer for them. But
Right.
That's why we try to avoid those things. And, it kind of overlaps with some of the other things I said earlier about what makes a winning offer stand out. Like, if you don't do those things, then it's to your detriment.
Well, okay, so let's go back there. What's if you say what's the number one outside of price? Because we all know,
I know,
obviously,
exactly.
price is important.
Yeah.
But like you said before, sometimes price isn't the most important factor. Maybe they're building a house; it's done in 30 days. They need to sell that house quickly, right? So time. But other than price, I just said time. But other than price, what's the most important thing you think if you had to generalize? What's another most important thing?
I mean, just having, showing your commitment, and again, like finding out what is important to the seller. And I know I'm overlapping again, but that just goes such a long ways, I think. Am I missing like an obvious thing
No,
here?
I'm just curious.
Yeah, but I'm like, to me, those are kind of, what makes an offer strong is exactly what, if you don't do it, that's what makes your offer weak. So,
right. So knowing the needs of the seller, so understanding the needs of the sellers, understanding if it is time, maybe it's maybe they need extra 30 days because they're going to be in between houses,
right,
or whatever is important to them,
right,
and that has value. That's a negotiating point,
right? And where do your buyers have flexibility, and how can you play that to their advantage?
Gotcha.
To
Cool.
appease the sellers. Cool. So do you have a flexible closing date? Things like that. Like, are you willing to, they might want to sell it furnished. Are you willing to buy their furniture? Things like, like any of those little pieces that matter, especially in a competitive market. You can look at all those details and really get down to the nitty gritty. But
cool, good. Any parting words for anyone out there when writing offers?
No, I mean, I think we covered most of it there.
Cool.
I think communication is key. Making sure that you're well informed and that your buyers are well informed and that you're doing your due diligence. And so that nothing gets overlooked, and, creating that offer to appeal to both parties.
You're right.
So that everyone's happy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming, Nemi. I hope you have a great time up in Minnesota.
Yeah, thanks.
Stay warm up there.
Right. Yes, I'm bringing my puffer coat.
Nice. And thanks for joining us today. If you have any questions, comments, put them down below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want contact information from Miss Tiffany, if you're looking for real estate in Brevard County, she'd love to help you out. That information will be down below. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.